Hello and welcome to Stretford Paddock. It's Friday. We are here live with the news, so get your thoughts in the comments. We're going through those. Big news today, massive update on the takeover of Manchester United, or at least the partial takeover of Manchester United by Sir Jim Ratcliffe. Coming out of the BBC, we've got Simon Stone talking about how this deal is very, very close to being agreed, could be agreed within the next few days. We also have an update on exactly what Jim Ratcliffe is going to do when he gets here. Rumours again circulating, not going away, that he plans to axe Manchester United's footballing department, bring in new people, take over as one of the heads of the department and move forward in a different direction for Manchester United, something that I think we sorely need. Whether it works or not, whether it's the right people, a change is absolutely necessary at Manchester United, and we can analyse and scrutinise the specifics of who is coming in, who is going. But I think one thing's for sure, everyone looks at Manchester United as a club that isn't working properly, and things need to change for us to work properly. Let me just get in the comments. Lee Padden, morning Joe, morning Lee. Jockey Trot says morning Joe, good morning. Colin Coupleditch says morning Joe, good morning. FPL Mickle says looking fresh today. Thank you very much. I'm feeling fresh. I don't know, I haven't done anything. I don't know, I touched my face. I haven't done anything to my face. But it is a face, and that much we know. Let's get into this story then, first of all. And this is coming from Simon Stone this morning. Sir Jim Ratcliffe's minority stake close to being agreed. Sir Jim Ratcliffe's deal to become the minority shareholder in Manchester United is expected to be agreed during this month's international break, possibly as early as next week. It is expected that Ineos will pay around £1.25 billion to buy 25%. Now, that number might change depending on the exchange rate. We had Ben Jacobs on a couple of weeks ago who said, obviously, British press will tend to put these things into pounds. Obviously makes sense. However, the deal itself is taking place in dollars. So if it 1.25 billion in a few days when this gets done, it could be 1.2 billion, it could be 1.3 billion. That fluctuation is dependent on the dollar to pound conversion rate. So that's just in case anyone's thinking, well, it was this the other day, how come it's changed? That might be why. United's owners, the Glazer family, announced on the 22nd of November 2022, which is what? Almost literally almost a full year now, isn't it? If you take out holiday pay, that's a full year. They were considering selling the club. Ineos and Qatari banker Sheikh Jassim bin Hamad Al Thani both made offers, tabling bids of around £5 billion. However, neither bidder was willing to reach the Glazers' family valuation, with co-chairs Joel and Avram Glazer both known to be reluctant sellers. Sheikh Jassim withdrew from the process last month, claiming his final bid, thought to be double United's $3.2 billion, $2.64 billion stock market valuation, had not met the Glazers' demands. Ratcliffe had already amended his initial plan to buy the Glazers' 69% shareholding and reduced it to a majority stake. However, it was only when he reduced again to an anticipated 25% that the potential for an agreement increased. It's not entirely clear what the structure of the deal will be, nor if there will be specific dates that will allow Ratcliffe to increase his shareholding. It is thought to be around 250 or 245 million pounds in additional funds will be made available by Ratcliffe for infrastructure works related to the stadium. It's been reported that Ratcliffe wants to assume control of the footballing side of the operations. You can see there. Sources with a close working knowledge of Ratcliffe have told BBC that it was impossible to imagine he would agree to be a silent partner. As it mentions in the article, lays it out very clearly, Jim Ratcliffe from the start wanted full control of Manchester United. So did Sheikh Jassim. Sheikh Jassim was going down the 100% route. Jim Ratcliffe was going down the controlling stake route by buying out the Glazers' shares. Then that was knocked down to a sort of 51% share, which would include some of the Glazers' shares and some of the non-Glazer shares, but which would amount to still having full control, full voting rights at Manchester United. However, once again, as we've seen there, and I'm just repeating myself at this point, the Glazers weren't willing to even do that. So it seems as though this 25%, which isn't, ideal, isn't what United fans particularly wanted, is the only step that the Glazers were willing to take. And unfortunately, because of the way they own the shares at Manchester United, all that matters is, what do the Glazers want? No one can force them to do anything. No one can force them to sell unless you get a situation like Abramovich at Chelsea. This is big news though, because there was rumours that this wouldn't happen until, some of the reports were saying it's going to go into next year before this is agreed. A number of weeks, it could be months. Now we're getting a pretty firm deadline from Simon Stone, obviously hugely reliable, and the BBC, just by their nature, can't really speculate the same way that other publications can. So if he says it's going to be happening during this international break, I would assume and be relatively certain that it is going to happen within this international break. And the great thing about that is, when this deal gets done, when this deal gets agreed, that's when you're going to start to see interviews with Jim Ratcliffe. A lot more information is going to start to leak. What exactly is the contents of this deal? There are so many journalists, so many people who will be obsessing over the fine details of this. Probably hundreds of millions, certainly millions of Manchester United fans who are interested in who's taking over what. Will he be running the football department? Will he have an option to buy, an obligation to buy the rest of the Glazers shares at some point? All of those details will come out, presumably, when this deal gets agreed. Because as it stands at the moment, no one's sharing anything. There may even be NDAs involved. And whilst this deal hasn't been done, there would be no point from anyone from Jim Ratcliffe's side going into the finer details of this deal when they haven't even happened yet. So we're going to be finding out all of that stuff soon, which to me is very, very exciting, because this could be the difference between United competing for the big trophies in the next few years and another decade of 4th, 6th, 3rd, 5th, 7th, 3rd, like these sorts of finishers, not challenging for the Champions League at all in the last decade. And if we're honest, other than, January the 1st, 2021, when we were top of the league, even then that didn't turn into a fully fledged title charge. We've not challenged for the title in a decade. And I think, this is hopefully a step towards that. Akbar Mia says, "Hello, Joe. I've come to Qatar on holiday and asked the people what they're hearing, and they've said that Sheikh Jassim is fully out. I wonder who he's speaking to, who would know that. But I mean, that ship seems to have sailed, doesn't it? There's no mention of Sheikh Jassim anymore. This deal looks like it's about to be agreed, or it has been agreed in principle and is about to be finalised. So, yeah, I think it is Sir Jim Ratcliffe. Lee Padden says, "I like this. If he's willing to invest this much when he only owns a quarter of the club, I think we can expect more when he owns a greater percentage of the shares." Completely agree. You look at what the Glazers have put into the club, it is somewhere in the region of, if you include the debt, minus 1.5 billion into Manchester United is what they've put in. Like they got, 350 million in debt or 400 million in loans when they bought the club, 500 million maybe. They've then paid around £1 billion on debt and interest payments, and around, 200 odd million in dividends. So you add all that up, you're looking somewhere in the region of £1.5 billion they've taken out, having put nothing in. Jim Ratcliffe is about to put 1.25 billion in, which is actually his money that he is paying. And he's about to put a further 250 million in, which is his money that he is paying, that isn't going on to Manchester United's debt. Already in what will be essentially his first day as a minority owner of Manchester United, he will have put in more money of his own than the Glazers have put in nearly 20 years, which is staggering really when you think about it, isn't it? And I know that this the way that this deal is unfolding, 25% now, it's not everyone's favourite. But already you're seeing an owner who is willing to put their own money, put their own reputation on the line for Manchester United, something the Glazers have never done. They've stayed away. All they've done is sap money out of Manchester United. At least, and again, it is an at least, Sir Jim Ratcliffe is saying, right, I'm going to put some of my money in. And hopefully, if and when he owns a majority share of Manchester United, we will then see another few hundred million, maybe $1 billion for a new stadium. Who knows? But to me, it may not be the ideal scenario, but it's certainly a better one than we had 12 months ago. Let's move on then, because once he comes in, the next thing is, what's he going to do? We already know about the 250 million for potential stadium and infrastructure redevelopments. The next step is bringing in his own people. So Sir Jim Ratcliffe could axe 3 Manchester United chiefs, including Richard Arnold, when he takes over operations at Old Trafford, with the British billionaire takeover set to be complete next week. Sir Jim Ratcliffe is set to make an instant impact on the completion of his purchase of a stake in Manchester United, according to reports. We can scroll down just underneath that little clip there. However, these roles are currently filled by CEO Richard Arnold, Football Director John Murtough, and Director of Football Operations, which, what are the two different things there? Football Director and Director of Football Operations. They sort of sound like the same thing to me. David Harrison, who was only appointed earlier this year. As a result, The Sun is now reporting that all three could lose their jobs as a direct result of Ratcliffe's takeover, although it has been suggested in The Sun that Sheikh Jassim would buy Manchester United. So I don't know how much we can rely on that. However, it's not just The Sun that's reported this over the last few weeks. It's already been suggested that Arnold would leave in the event of Jim Ratcliffe's arrival. The names we've heard, and I'll repeat them, I'm sure a lot of you have heard them, is this idea that Dave Brailsford and Jim Ratcliffe would almost come in as a pair in terms of the footballing, heading up the footballing side of things. Maybe not such a hands-on day-to-day approach, but more of a kind of structural approach where they set the parameters, they set the style of... I mean, I guess I know it sounds a bit sort of overblown, but United need to have a sporting identity, don't they? And it's like, well, you know, that's a bit cheesy. It's only football or whatever. But it's not. It's not only football. It's a multi-billion-pound organisation, and other clubs are doing this stuff. We are being left behind. We need a sporting identity that goes beyond any footballer, beyond any manager, beyond even any sporting director. Manchester United as a club should exist with its own rules, its own ideas, and its own identity that carries on through time with all the parts changing around it. Manchester United shouldn't fling wildly from one thing to another. It's this, it's deep line counter-attack, it's high pressing this. All the academies are going to play this way. Okay, now all the academies are going to play that way. Now we're getting Matic and Lukaku and Pogba, all these, you know, big players. Now we're getting Anthony, Lisandro Martinez, and Mason Mount, these small technical players. Like, we can't keep doing this. So it's going to be Dave Brailsford, supposedly, and Jim Ratcliffe, who are sort of overseeing the kind of footballing vision of Manchester United in broad terms. Then underneath that, it's Jean-Claude Blanc, who I think was the director at Juventus and then PSG, who will be overseen on a more day-to-day basis, perhaps taking over from Richard Arnold in that CEO role. And then the reports are that underneath that, one of the main targets, again, this isn't confirmed, this is just the most commonly reported names, is a Paul Mitchell type who has a history in scouting, a history in negotiations, a history in finding and acquiring top targets, like he did at Tottenham, like he did at Southampton, like he's done at Monaco and Leipzig as well. People who have done it before, got a great track record, and can actually guide Manchester United, regardless of, let's be honest, managers and players are almost temporary. They're almost, what's the word when you got a camera that you take a picture and then you bin it? What's that called? Disposable. There you go. Managers and players are essentially disposable. They come and go within a year or 2 or 5. The vision of the club has to be permanent, has to be continuous. We've got probably one of the best kind of blueprints and footprints left by Matt Busby and Sir Alex Ferguson of any club in the world. Very few have got 2 figures of that stature that can guide a club through history and through time. We need to sort of galvanise around that and have an identity that withstands a manager falling out with a player or an accident, you know, a bad signing or a bad hiring. This is the thing that Manchester United need, and hopefully they can bring that. Let's have a look at some of the comments. Kyle Nicholson says, not sure what football experience Dave Brailsford has. He's a cycling coach. He is a cycling coach, but he's got sporting... I mean, I'm not saying he's going to be amazing, but if I'm trying to look at the positives, he's someone that completely revolutionised how the Olympics is approached. The British method for cycling, that, what's it called? Minimal gains, or basically looking at every piece of what an athlete does and trying to improve them all by 1%. That turned Britain from, 3 gold medals in 2002 to being the most dominant cycling outfit in the history of the Olympics for the next decade. These things work across sports. The whole of the Olympics is approached like that now. All Olympic athletes, essentially, pretty much, approach their sport the way Dave Brailsford brought into British cycling. So he's revolutionised that. Now, obviously, that doesn't mean that he's a great footballing man, but again, this is sport and athletics and the way athletes train and the way things are done. These broader things can be hopefully applied across different disciplines. And then you get the details of a coach, the specifics of a manager, then you get the vision of someone like a Paul Mitchell, then you've got the CEO under that. Dave Brailsford isn't on the training ground. He's looking at every part of Manchester United and going, how can we make all of these things slightly better? And to me, that is a philosophy and an idea that would work in football. Marginal gains, that's it. Thank you very much, Aaron. He hasn't got a tremendous footballing background, but I do think some things are universal across all disciplines. If you make every part of what you do 1% better across, you put all those things together and now you're 15% better, and that's taking you above your competition, I think that can be applied to business, to athletics, to football, to chess, to cooking, to anything. That concept works. So we'll see. Tina Tellison-Tatoka says, Leipzig, Southampton are not Manchester United. That's a good point. So unless you're going to get Real Madrid's sporting director or Barcelona's sporting director or Man City's sporting director, there aren't many Manchester Uniteds out there. At least picking someone that has sort of climbed the ladder and been successful everywhere they've been makes more sense than our current policy, which is, were you nearby when we needed a new one? Yeah, okay, you can just get promoted from within. At least they've got some experience. Paul Mitchell has got some experience of turning teams around, and I think it was Red Bull offered him the chance to be the sort of head of almost football operations across the whole of the Red Bull group, which I don't think he did. He went to Monaco instead. But again, you're going to have to take a risk at some point, because these jobs, these sort of top-line footballing directors, there's only a handful of them in the world. It's more rare than a top manager. It's certainly more rare than top players. So there's not, you can't just go out and grab a world-class sporting director who's not got a job. It's hard to do that. So I think taking a chance on someone is a good idea. Let's move on. Kobbie Mainoo then. He's given a fitness update on his Instagram. He said they're getting back up to speed and accompanied with a picture of him training. He's been playing for the under-19s pretty regularly over the last week or two. Obviously had this long injury out. It was out for around 3 months with that knee injury, I believe it was. It was against, I can't remember who it was against now. Was it Dortmund? Pre-season anyway, I was at the game. It might have been the one in Texas. Anyway, he's been out for a long time, and he's sort of insinuating that he's getting back to the speed required to get back to the first team. It would be a shame not to see him in the first team very much, but obviously with United's form being up and down, I think sometimes managers like to stick with what they know rather than taking risks and potentially hurting the reputation and the confidence of a young player. But it is great to see him back, up and running, playing for the under-19s. Hopefully, Luton, not to be sniffed at, but maybe a bench appearance against Luton with the option of bringing him on if, and it's a big if because United haven't done this all season, if we could enter the second half with a comfortable lead, maybe we could see a little bit of Kobbie Mainoo against Luton, but I'm not counting my chickens before they've hatched because we've struggled against pretty much every team we've played against. If you're watching this, please hit the like button. Let's try and get to 500 likes on the video. That is going to be all from me this morning. We're going to be back this afternoon. We've got the brew. It's going to be me, Jay and Steve. Looking forward to the weekend. I haven't really even spoken to Steve about the 4-3 the other night, about United's current situation, so we're going to be getting into that as well, and obviously all the carnage that comes with the brew on any given day. Thank you very much for joining me. This is the news, and we'll see you in a bit.